He had his gun, so he just swung it open.
I start to notice that, the atmosphere feels a little bit weird.
First thing he seen was this 6.5 foot tall, broad shoulder, dark hair. That freaked him out.
We hadn't talked to her about like life and death and what any of that means. She's 3 years old,
So we turned around. Suddenly there's a whole tree falling across the road.
And she was describing to us that, there was a deceased person that she could see visually.
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, where we tackle the ever-expanding history and mystery of monsters and supernatural madness every Monday. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca for more information, or even check out exclusive content and support us at patreon.com/CryptidClues.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Cryptid Clues. Now, I must apologize on the delay. We've experienced a brief technical difficulty, but we're back on track. We're back in action, minus about maybe 24 hours in delay, but no harm, no foul. A quick plug before we get into this episode. Last week, we hit our official 100th main episode. Reuben and I share some laughs, chats about the past, present, and future. It's a great, relaxing time with some good conversations. So tune into last week's episode. Now, with this week's, I'm going to do something old school. Cue the campfire. Check. Sprinkle in those crickets. Check. All right. We're going to begin with our first Sasquatch encounter of this evening. And I quote, "Interesting story. Long-time lurker. Not sure if I believe, but I'm open to the possibility. Anyways, the story is from a friend of a very good friend of mine. He told me a couple years ago, so I'll tell this the best I can. He relayed the story to me immediately after his friend told him because he knows I'm somewhat interested in the subject. Here's the story. He was camping by a lake alone in the Cascades in western Washington. I'm not exactly sure where, but he said it was a few miles in and pretty remote. Everything seemed normal, and as he went to bed, shortly after, his tent and campsite kept getting hit with small rocks. At least it sounded like rocks. Something large then moved through his camp. He thought it was a bear. It headed down to the water and made splashing sounds. It eventually went silent and he fell asleep. He said in the morning, his camp was disturbed with items strewn about. He then noticed huge Bigfoot-type footprints in the ground heading down to the lake, and a cluster of them where it seemed like whatever it was entered the water. He got scared and packed everything up. He took photos of his camp and prints and left. He immediately, when he got cell service again, contacted a science department at the University of Washington. I think he said UW, but I'm not 100%, and told them what happened. To his surprise, they asked if he would wait there and a couple people would meet him and hike back in with him. He agreed. He ended up showing them the camp and prints. According to him, they cataloged it, took photos, and walked back out with him. They said that a lot of university researchers are more interested in this subject than they let on. Anyways, I obviously can't confirm any of this. It was a story told to me by a degree of separation, but it always stuck in my mind as interesting." End quote. Now, the big thing here that I really like is the science department of a university openly acknowledging that a lot of researchers are very interested in this subject when they let on. I think that's a very fascinating thing. And it's good to know that the scientific community actually has that stance on such a thing like this. And hopefully not just with Sasquatch, but with other cryptids in general. It just goes to show that while us in the public eye, as just civilians, citizens out there, we're openly discussing these things more and more, and that is reflecting in our post-secondary education system. A great example of this as well is a few episodes back, I interviewed Ryan Willis from Sasquatch University, and it's fantastic that just students in general are even bringing these things up forward with their professors and in their curriculums. And I think that this is something that needs to happen. And if we keep going along this trajectory, then maybe we can start making huge ground. And I'm not necessarily saying, hey, we're going to get an equivalent UAP congressional hearing, but with Bigfoot, but who knows? It's interesting and exciting to see where this is going to progress to when we're all just really embracing and discussing in open conversation these things. Very powerful. But I digress. Moving on to our next encounter, and I quote, "Skeptic, but just heard something inexplainable." Alright, I don't really believe in any of this stuff. I've watched the Bigfoot shows and documentaries and thought everyone was mistaking other animals, lying, or crazy. However, I just experienced the creepiest and kind of scariest thing ever. I heard loud smacking or thumping, and took my dogs out into the yard and realized the noise was coming from the woods diagonally from us. It's like a house a good couple hundred or more feet that direction, and then it's woods. It was a continuous thumping noise, and when I walked over towards the corner to see if I could hear it better, it stopped. I waited for a while because it was so strange and scary. I wanted answers, and it did pick up again, but further in the distance, like it moved further away. If I'm 100% honest, I was really creeped out by the whole thing. And the only reason I stayed out of curiosity is because I knew I was safe in the yard with my dogs. They'd protect me from anything. One other bit that I didn't realize immediately was that the whole area was silent. No cicadas, birds, etc. I heard one bird in the opposite direction, but nothing else. It's usually full of life outside where I am, even this late. I did capture audio of it, kind of, but it's really hard to hear unless you put the phone speaker to your ear, full volume up. Even then, it's so faint. Too much noise from my dogs and outside wind. It reminded me of those stories I'd see and think was full of baloney, whether they heard Bigfoot hitting trees. I'm kind of questioning everything I believe now. I'm super freaked out. I won't say it was anything other than inexplainable and really creepy. I'm the type that I have to see with my own eyes to believe. I've never heard of anything else that could make that kind of noise. I'm in Iowa, directly south of Des Moines. I'm out in an area that's not all that populated and surrounded by lots of woods, fields, rivers, etc. Plenty of places for wildlife to live. End quote. Now, of course, you're not getting a visual sighting in this encounter, but it's one of the more safer ones, I guess you could say. I don't know if safer, maybe more comfortable. And I say that reluctantly because, yes, this situation is absolutely hair-raising and unsettling. But in comparison to seeing this on their terms, being out in the middle of the woods or being in a very isolated situation alone without dogs or other people around you, that's where it's a situation I know myself I would not want to be present in. Being near your home, there's sanctuary nearby, you have your pets to protect you, and you hear the tree knocks out in the distance, that sounds ideal. Now, you're not getting that visual confirmation, of course, but another scenario too, you're driving, you have the sanctuary of your vehicle, full tank of gas hopefully, you come around a bend, and then you see it. It's right there. But you have a basic level of defense, or a means of escape is more what I'm trying to say. There's those scenarios that I absolutely would put over other ones, and I'm not dismissing the fear factor involved. All of these situations are terrifying, but this is definitely one that could be a Bigfoot, could be something else. We will never know because this is just the extent of the situation where it's just the tree knocks, and the tree knocks, oddly enough, we're moving further and further away and deeper into the woods. And you do have to be careful because I firmly believe that there are things, and I've mentioned this on many other episodes, there are things in the woods that want to get your attention, want to draw you out. If you're hearing crying, if you're hearing something talk out of the woods, no, you stay away and you go back to your house, your vehicle, you get out of there. Woods should not be talking. The woods should not at night be trying to pull you in. That's when you know something is off. So, buddy system and get out. I digress. Moving on to our next Bigfoot encounter. And I quote, "Staying up in the mountains in a small southwest North Carolina town since this past Sunday, and I've gone to town to socialize and have a drink or dinner, and I came back between 10:30 to 11 p.m. every night. Before anyone says anything about me being drunk or having too many, it's been a single beer which is drank when I first got there. Meaning, it's been 3 to 4 hours since I had it by the time I have been getting back. Honestly, it's been unnerving getting out of my car at night. It's literally pitch black. The sounds of the animals are super intense since it's so quiet. Mostly bugs and crickets or whatever, but I kept feeling on alert, like I was being watched. Didn't think anything of it. Just thought I was paranoid because of the darkness and bolted down the driveway and into the house. Monday and Tuesday night, same thing. Kept having a weird feeling of being watched, even though I didn't see anything. Then Wednesday night will be a night I will never forget. I was driving back again, and it was a little after 11 p.m. I turned off the main road onto this little gravel road that kind of goes around a bend with thick woods on the left and a cornfield on the right. And of course, I had my high beams on since there are no lights anywhere around. I come around the bend onto a stretch of straight road, and I see this massive creature standing in the road. I slammed the brakes on and immediately just felt panic because I didn't know what I was looking at. It was huge, like 7 to 8 feet tall and hairy. As I sat there frozen looking at it, it slowly turned toward me and looked for a second, then kind of fast walked, jogged back into the woods on the left side of the road and was gone. However, the way it moved was weird. I can't really describe it. It didn't look normal to me. I know what I saw, but I still don't believe I saw it. I'm an analytical person by nature, a software engineer who was raised by scientists that taught me to question everything, but always demand proof before you believe it. As such, I never really believed in Bigfoot, per se, as I didn't see proof, but now it's kind of shaken my foundation of how I view reality to the core. I have seen a black bear. I've seen a black bear standing up. It was not a black bear. It looked like a giant gorilla mixed with a Wookiee, but dark colored. Unless a giant gorilla just escaped from a local zoo, I don't have an explanation for what I saw. I'm still shook by it even a day later, and I haven't really slept since because all I can do when I close my eyes is see a replay of that over and over again in my mind, and I honestly don't want to remember it. I just want to pretend I never saw it so I can go back to my own view of reality again. Also noticed as I drove past where it was, there was a strong smell of what I can only describe as exceedingly strong BO, like a person that didn't shower for a year times 10. Didn't have the windows down, but had the vent going because for whatever reason the windshield constantly wants to fog up, so I need to blast the air on it while driving to prevent it. I saw what I can only describe as a Bigfoot, and I kind of feel like I've been being watched by them since I've been here. Maybe the watching part has all been in my imagination, but every time I get out of the car at night, I have a huge adrenaline burst and I get a knot in the pit of my stomach, and I just want to run as fast as I can to get in the house. I've been researching all day and reading everything I can find because I need to understand this more. I'm not a person that can have something like this happen and just go on about their life. I need to know more about this. What is it? Why is it here? How it got here? Where did it come from? Etc. Ending quote here just to pick it up again in a second because that was the initial experience, and after a little bit of time passed, they provided an update of their situation, and I'm going to quote that now. I left the place this morning and now back home, but I had another weird situation occur on my way out. Well, I think it was weird. Perhaps it was just dumb chance, but I guess I will explain. Got back around 8 p.m. yesterday night, around when it was dusky. Not completely dark, but almost dark. Thankfully, didn't see anything. Decided I would load the car up before going to bed since I was leaving early this morning. Left around 4:30 a.m. I have the same weird feeling again like I was being watched, but quickly I loaded the car and went back inside to go to bed. I woke up this morning, got to the car, got in, started driving. Going down the mountain road with all the switchbacks and turns, got to the end of the road I was on just to turn into the main road. It forms a T, and about 15 feet prior to the end of the road was a large rock sitting right in the middle. That rock was not there at 8 p.m. I go hiking a lot in an area where rock slides happen at times, and usually if that happens, the rocks end up by the side of the road, not in the middle of it. It honestly looked like it was placed there by someone or something in order to force someone to get out of their car and move it. I got the same unnerving feeling as if I was being watched, and I almost started panicking. No way in hell I was getting out. So I very carefully drove a little off the side of the road on one side and managed to get around it. I sped out of there pretty quick after that. I honestly got the feeling I was being with by them, as if they noticed me loading the car and figured out I would be leaving early, so they made it more difficult or wanted to play a trick on me. I have no proof of this at all, and maybe it's just me being over imaginative, but I find it difficult to believe this rock could have randomly ended up where it did in the time frame between when I drove past that area at 8 p.m. and then again at 4:30 a.m. It's not like there is a ton of traffic on the road, and I didn't see a place where a rock would have came from, although it's possible rocks fall down from there. Honestly, I've gone from being shaken to kind of being pissed. Not only that I've had my version of reality ripped from me unwantingly, but now that they seemingly were screwing with me too. And I can only imagine laughing at me the whole time. End quote. Oh my goodness. There's so many things from this overall experience that I just want to pick apart in a good way. Let's start at the end, though. The rock being in the middle of the road. I firmly believe that these beings love to play these types of tricks and love to do these sorts of things on people when they're trying to leave an area. And I say this because I've spoken to many individuals that have had these situations where they are driving and all of a sudden it's a tree that's been placed over the road, and the last thing you want to do is get out of your vehicle and deal with something like this. You don't want to, and especially when it's at nighttime in the dark. There's so many different levels to this, and a rock being on the middle of the road is very much in line with Sasquatch. Again, this is coming out of the gate when they just saw one, and for whatever reason it chose to reveal itself. Maybe it was unexpectedly, not anticipating a vehicle to come around, but I do believe that these beings were watching this gentleman for a long period of time. So they decided to get spotted, and maybe that goes hand in hand with leaving the rock on the road, and they wanted to play a little bit of a trick. It doesn't sound like the person had a lot of activity at their place of residence at the time, so they were aware, but it seems like they kept their distance to a degree, which is interesting to think about. There's many reports of them coming up and banging and walking around these small like cabins and homes. Of course, those are in the more remote areas, and this does sound very remote, but it doesn't sound like he had any real issues directly at his home. That's not to say that they aren't still running around outside and he just wasn't able to really detect it. That's very plausible. But it's also very interesting how this thing was able just to look, and I feel like it's one of those situations where you got your high beams on and whatever's in front of you, if you're a person, you're not going to see the driver. You can look in that general direction, but another animal, that's where you look at Bigfoot or a dogman, and they just look over and they make that eye contact with you like, holy smokes, how do they know exactly where I am behind these beaming headlights and high beams? Like, it's eerie and freaky, but they acknowledge you in those moments. And the gentleman speaking to having a very scientific proof, confirmation, evidence, scientific fact, all that kind of stuff as a background. That's what is really rattling in this scenario, because their whole world was turned upside down. And I have to sit back myself and think at times, because when you are dealing with a Sasquatch, when you're dealing with any type of cryptid in general, and you see it, you see one of these things, what happens? You start questioning everything. Perfectly normal, because something that we're raised to just deny and to ignore and maybe mock and laugh at and just, oh, it's stuff of movies. We watch movies with aliens and monsters and superheroes and all these crazy things. They're not real, of course. That's the thing, though. If you see one of these things and it's real, then that changes. That changes everything, because now you have to start questioning it all and think, well, where's the line drawn in the sand? At what point can we put our foot down and say, this is where it comes to, this is it, it's just, you know, it's everything in normal society and life, and then, oh, no, Bigfoot's also in there too. How can you do that? And that's why me as a person, as I've grown with this show and I've listened to these experiences and talked to so many people, I'm starting to realize that that line just keeps moving further and further back, because you look into Bigfoot, you look into not necessarily the Loch Ness Monster per se, but equivalent cryptids of a similar nature, and that branches out into other things, and it just, you start to realize that our bubble grows and grows and grows, and you just got to try and make sure you don't pop it. That's the most difficult part. You can go down those rabbit holes, you can get sucked in and just keep on going and going and going, but it can get so overwhelming. And if you come from a lifestyle where you are really not immersed in this to a degree or open to it, it can really, I don't want to say break, but really damage you. There are many folks that experience one of these creatures and they refuse to go back onto the woods after. And again, I don't blame them. You live your life a specific way and you've been raised a specific way. And when something like this, which just should not exist, enters that bubble, it's life altering. It is life changing. The best thing you can do is talk about it. As difficult as that is, share your story, talk about it, just help yourself realize that you are not alone, and it's okay to feel the things that you felt when this thing occurred, when you witnessed this thing, and that you can go back out there. And I'm not saying go right back out there, get back on the horse and go face your fears or anything like that, but in the right setting, the right time, you can face it and you can get back and, you know, not let it beat you down. Like, we've come this far in our life, and while yes, cryptids probably have taken more of a back seat now than they have in our history, we still have come this far as a species, and we're doing, for the most part, okay. So let that just be a comforting thought to get back out there and, you know, go on those hikes, get into the woods, and just make sure to keep listening to your intuition. Things will always be okay. They always work out. And with that, the end of the episode draws near. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Cryptid Clues. If you want to reach out, say hi, you can do so at our email, cryptidclues@gmail.com. If you want to check out our social media channels, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And we're also on Patreon as well. So until next time, everyone, take care and stay safe.
Thank you.